Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle. My name is Alan Hyde, and tonight we have a special guest with us, Shanaci Cook, LPC.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Hello, everyone.
It's wonderful to have you, and I know we were talking a little bit prior about your experience with EMDR, and for you guys listening along, we're going to dive into that and just your experience treating trauma. And I'm gonna adhere to the request. We're not gonna go too deep at first, but we'll see. You know, we're two therapists, so we'll see where this goes.
Yes, okay. Yeah, so I am EMDR trained, and for those of you who don't know, EMDR is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I always have to think EMDR. But it is a form of therapy that has been proven to work through trauma at a faster rate than talk therapy.
And how long have you been practicing with EMDR training?
Probably about 2, 3 years, I'd say. Yeah.
Was there a specific passion behind that, or something specifically that drew you into seeking EMDR training?
Great question. So it actually just kind of fell into my lap.
Okay.
Yes, I was at a group practice that worked with a lot of clients who had experienced violence. So domestic violence, a childhood of sexual abuse, sexual violence, child abuse. And so doing that, we just discovered that EMDR, like I said, was really effective for clients who had a traumatic background. And so I worked with a domestic violence shelter in the DFW area, and our director there just paid for all of us to get trained.
That's kind of her.
Yeah,
Or him, or
I
whoever
know
it was.
her. Yeah, very kind. So it just kind of snuck up on me. Nothing that I sought out myself, but for myself. But I mean, I think that it's really changed my modalities for therapy and overall practice.
Do you practice with that modality with the majority of your clients in your practice now, or do you kind of still just utilize a lot of different modalities in your practice across the clients that you treat?
I do both. So
Okay.
it's probably about 50-50, 50% talk therapy, 50% EMDR. And my go-to is CBT.
Okay.
Yeah, during talk therapy. So yeah, it's about 50-50. Sometimes you still get those clients who just want to talk, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And for the viewers, obviously you and I know, but CBT is
Yes, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, or theory. Yeah.
yeah, and it's that's a wonderful modality. It's interwoven in all of the work we do with the skills and practical skills to give clients. But I think EMDR too, one of my favorite things with it is building foundations with clients. You know, I mean, I don't go the EMDR route, but any trauma treatment I do
Yeah.
is always foundational building, and I've always respected that about EMDR practicing clinicians. And I guess my curiosity, just for them to get to know you in this, is like, when someone comes in to see you for therapy, what are kind of some of the first steps and what they could expect from Shanacy when they come in?
Yeah, it's typically the intake session for the first time, and that's just getting a lot of back information on how did you get here, right? How did you end up in my office, or choosing me as a therapist, or realizing that you need therapy. And so that goes back to history. You know, some people, history of trauma. A lot of people, that's typically why they seek my services, is because of I work with complex trauma. And so they have a history of trauma, and so it's going through treatment planning of what brought you here and how do we start to make some progress towards healing. So we're setting some goals. We're looking at a little bit of your history of trauma, your family history, some upbringing, diving a little bit deeper to who you are, right, as a person, and how can you heal from whatever that you're struggling with. How can I support you through that healing?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and I think that's one of my, like, when people ask me about therapy, it's like, you know, this is, you know, very much a human being who has dedicated their skills and their learning to best supporting you where you're at.
Yeah.
And are you still working with like adolescents, teenagers, or do you predominantly in your practice work with adults?
I say teens and up.
Okay.
So yes, I start with adolescents.
Do you have a cutoff?
Uh, Age cutoff or
Yeah.
well, they have to be 14.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I prefer, 14 and older, because the Gen Z, they're big on therapy. Like it's on TikTok, all these different things that are coming up that you and I are privy to because we're therapists. So they'll seek out counseling for themselves for the most part. So 14 and up, I prefer that. They're good with talk therapy, or if they want to try EMDR, they're more flexible than what the younger generations are.
Yeah, these younger generations, I think because of social media, are super into therapy. It's kind of funny to see. Because I remember when I was young, nobody talked about therapy. But social media is an interesting thing.
Yeah, it's changed the game for all of us. Yeah.
I imagine a lot of people come to you, they want to do EMDR. And, for those who tune in here consistently, we talk a little bit about EMDR on this show and other trauma modalities. But what do you kind of advise people on? And this may be, we could go into a lot of depth, but just kind of a snapshot of how you educate clients on whether or not they're a fit for like starting EMDR work.
Yeah. So I pretty much say anybody can do it, right? Depending on whatever situation you're dealing with. Anxiety, depression, there's typically a root to all of those challenges that people face. But you do have to trust the process when it comes to EMDR. And some people just aren't at a place where they could trust the process, because it is a process. A lot of us, including me, when I first tried EMDR, I tried to control it.
Ooh.
Yeah, and if you try to control it, it doesn't work as well. If you are able to just allow it to do its work. So I find several clients who are like, okay, I'll try it. I'll give it a try, see if I like it. And that's great. We'll try it. And then some of them are like, okay, this isn't for me. I don't want to move forward. And then you get some who are like, I got a lot out of that. I want to move forward and keep going.
When you have a client that you've been doing some good work with and they decide, I don't want to do the EMDR work, do you guys just completely revert into maybe like another set of treatment goal plans that you have put together, or
Yes.
do you redevelop those with them, or what's your approach with that?
Yeah, we just, like you said, transition into, typically they have the same goals, but that's them where I will pull into some more CBT tools and different dynamics to help them still reach the same goals, just at a different pace or a different process. Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of letting them guide the process, huh?
Right.
So if you're listening, we talk about this every week, where it's like we bring people on, they share their expertise, but I think Shanacy is highlighting again, and it happens every week, where it's like, we're just people, we're here to meet you where you're at. And so if you're listening and you like what Shanacy is saying, we're going to plug all of our information as we go. We'll give you ample opportunities to get your information so people can find you. And you're on Psychology Today, I noticed that. I think that's how I initially found you, wasn't it?
Yeah, social media.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. It was the Facebook group.
Yes, the Facebook group. Yeah. But I'm on that, Psychology Today, all those great places.
And because I found you on there, I wasn't 100% sure. Do you have a website that they could land at?
I do, yes. It's sccounselingcenter.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So as we go, Chase is, and thank you, Chase, I see you over there, our fearless producer behind the scene there. Mm-hmm. So he'll have that in the description. So for you guys watching, if you like the discussion that we're having, if you like the tidbits we've already been discussing, you'll find the link right down in the comments, and feel free to go in there and interact with us. Chase will update us as well if you guys have any questions in the comments. But EMDR, you also have done some work with couples, and you have some experience with teenagers. I'm unfamiliar, so this is like a new territory question. Is there a modality of doing EMDR with couples? Is that a thing?
It is a thing. I have yet to try it, but it is a thing. It's a thing where you have both spouses are in the room, and one is doing EMDR while the other one is observing. And it's supposed to be really effective to see now I'm like, maybe I got to try it.
Yeah.
So the spouse gets to witness their spouse going through EMDR, and then the next session, the other spouse goes. And so it is supposed to be something very enlightening for the marriage.
Yeah. It's a vulnerable process. Sometimes I'll bring partners in for collateral information, and just that is vulnerable. I couldn't imagine. Well, I mean, I can. Obviously, I've done this for 13 years, but that would be a large trust process, to do that. I think that'd be a lot of fun to walk people through that process.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I'm like, I need to give it a try.
Yeah, and I don't work with couples, so I'll refer them all to you.
Okay. Yeah.
So I also saw you. So you studied, was it your undergrad in Colorado, and then you came here for your master's?
Yes.
Are you guys from there?
Yes, I
Okay.
am. I'm from Colorado. Go Broncos. I'm sure all the Cowboys fans love it.
Yeah, bless their hearts.
Right. Right, bless their hearts. But yes, I'm from Colorado. So my undergrad was at University of Northern Colorado. So grew up in Colorado Springs and Denver area, and later after I married, we were taken to the Texas area for my husband's career.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And for those listening, husband is sitting right here behind the camera too.
He
Shout out to
is.
Corey.
Yes.
So you guys got drawn out here for some career stuff for Corey, and then just decided this is where you were going to build the foundation, huh?
Yes,
Very cool.
we've been here ever since. I think almost 18 years. It's been a long time. Yeah.
And then in Frisco, in that area where you opened up your private practice, you did that how many years ago, you were saying?
Yeah, I opened up my private practice around 3 years ago.
Okay.
And now we've expanded to a group practice. So
Oh, very cool.
yeah, there's other clinicians at the practice. But yeah, it's been 3 years.
Do you supervise anybody, or is it just independent clinicians right now in a group practice?
They're under my practice, so
Okay.
they're considered employees,
Yeah.
but I don't supervise yet. Next year I'm planning to get trained to become a supervisor. I do supervise students though, practicum
Okay.
students. Yeah, so I'll have a practicum student, generally every quarter I'll have a practicum student under me.
Did you or do you coordinate that like with where you did your master's?
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I do. Where I did mine was Amberton, and I also have just some other colleges in the area where I'm on their list too and take some of their practicum students.
Nice. And say someone does reach out to you from this, do you take insurance, or are you private pay mostly? Do you do both?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, insurance and private pay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to just have the options. I found that too in my private practice. Like, there are plenty of clients who can do the private pay, but to have the offering of the insurance, it makes it accessible for quite a lot of clients, and it's always
Yeah.
nice to be able to offer both.
Right, absolutely. And I'm just big on reaching the BIPOC community. And
BIPOC.
yes. So that's
Enlighten me.
Yeah, this is actually BIPOC Counseling Month. BIPOC Awareness Counseling Month is
Okay.
July. So BIPOC is bipartisan indigenous people of color.
Okay. Is there an act like a hashtag for this or anything like that like on social media?
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, I wonder.
I don't know.
I wonder because I want to hear all about this, Chase. If we
Yeah.
put that, just the acronym, as a hashtag in the comments, do we want to try that and see if anything just happens? But
I'm sure something's going to pop up.
yeah.
Yeah, it's BIPOC. BIPOC.
And what got you into this? How'd you find out about it? Like, how'd you get into the movement of it?
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty much minorities, right? Working with, and there's a huge stigma for counseling with those different minority groups. It was pretty much around the pandemic time and way before, but around the pandemic time was also the George Floyd killing, which hit the media with the masses. where that wasn't the first killing by the hands of the police of a black man, but that was one that hit social media, all the media outlets, everything like that. So that brought more awareness.
It certainly did.
Yeah, and a lot of us, we were at home, we were, quarantined, and so most of us were on social media and watching TV a lot more than what we used to before. But then a lot of the BIPOC community started reaching out for services, right? They started realizing about how the racial trauma in the world was impacting them.
Yeah.
So I would get contacted a lot for just therapy from the BIPOC community because lots of times they want a therapist that they can identify with.
Yeah.
And from there, it's just taken off. That's the majority of my clientele are BIPOC.
Gotcha. Well, and I've found a huge blessing in doing this too, is like not everybody seeking therapy is going to go on to psychology today, see a big white guy and be like, you know what? I think I'll do therapy with that guy. Right. And so networking and being able, like when someone maybe isn't comfortable with, they see a white dude, and being able to refer them in the proper directions. And we were kind of talking about this on a show a couple weeks ago. A doctor, she works with addictions in minority communities and how much of a stigma there's been in that. And we're seeing a shift. And I think that's not just beautiful. I think it's a natural process, when people start to they raise the willingness to have the conversation on all sides and to support it and have that open platform. And I'm curious for you too, if you've found that even more opportunities like this have been opening up because that stigma is dropping.
I do think that that's a big push because of we're being more accepting and inclusive when it comes to the minority population on social media and television. Now, we're not 100% there. We still have a ways to go, but it is starting to become more prevalent. And the thing, too, is that the lack of resources in a lot of the BIPOC communities, right? And so that's something that I try to do is go in different communities and teach different classes or try to get my name out there to help to lower the stigma. If I could start building relationships with different BIPOC communities who don't have as many resources, that's something that is big to me, is huge to me, because I think we all deserve to have counseling.
Yeah.
And
if this was somebody's first time, because we'll get that on here sometimes, like I'll read the comments after or like on the YouTube and they'll be like, man, I've never sat down and listened to something like this before. And so if it was somebody's first time and they looked and they saw, you know what, I identify with Shanacy, what would you say to them to kind of pull them in the direction to normalize therapy for them? Like, what would be your message to them?
Try it. That's just, I meet people who are like, oh, I don't know about that therapy thing. I just want to pray about it. You pray about my problems, right? Take my problems to God, or tell my mom my problem. Like people who don't really trust therapy. But my thing is, God made therapists for a reason, right? Prayer works, but prayer with faith, right?
Yeah.
Getting into therapy, getting into someone who is licensed, someone who has created a safe space for you, someone who is big on protecting your personal information. So ethically, we can't go and say what's going on with your life like your mom may, right? Or
my mom would.
Yes. There's nothing holding them back from that. But for us, we do see the importance in counseling and the importance of making it safe and secure for somebody to come and open up. So my thing is, try it. Step out on faith and give it a try and see if it works for you. I haven't so far had anyone who's like, I tried therapy and I hated it and I'm never going back, right?
Yeah. The only cases you're, and you and I know this, and I think kind of relaying this to the general population is a lot of times when you hear that perspective of like, I tried it and I hate it, you're dealing with typically a a version of those personality traits where like they were going to hate it before
Right.
they even tried it.
Yes.
Which is to each their own.
Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah.
that they had already made up their mind.
Right.
Yeah.
And they did. And, some people are like, oh, it didn't work for me. And my thing is, well, did you work it?
Yeah.
Right? You can't just go and expect change. You got to implement the change.
Yeah, I think it builds on the point you were just making too of like step out on faith. And this was something that came into my journey a long time ago too, is like faith without works is dead.
Yes.
Yeah. I could say I believe, but if I'm not willing to take the action, if I'm not willing to be of service and, do the things that I believe my higher power would want me to be doing in service of good people, then what am I doing?
Yeah, right. And that is biblical. The faith without works is dead. And that's why I'm like, God made us for a reason, for therapists. He put this passion in our hearts. As as much as I do, it's a passion.
Yeah.
It's not a profession to get rich.
Yeah. I didn't do this for the money. That's for certain.
No. So it's a passion that we have to see and help people to heal and change the things that they're going through.
Yeah. Well, it's, I'm sure it translates like when I watch the videos, but I've been watching a lot of like the interviews back and I'm feeling it with you. And like the passion is real, and that's one of my favorite parts about sitting down with clinicians is like, I was talking with our producer prior of like, people coming on. I was like, I've tried to invite other people on, but the best part of having clinicians every week is they're always so passionate. They love what they do. It's clear when you're talking about it. And like when I asked you prior, like what were some of the things you knew right away? I love that. It's so nice to be in that presence.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I mean, just you doing this is, breaking down some stigmas. Just having this outlet for people to learn about let me learn from a therapist. Even though I may have that fear of going in and telling my problems right now. You're creating an outlet for them to get some information. So I think that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been fun to just kind of kick it around and get to know the clinicians, and we'll be having you on for future conversations, and I'm enjoying getting to know you. And I do want to hear a little bit more because you were passionate about working with couples, and we kind of took a trail towards talking about like the EMDR.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to ease that door open again and talk a little bit about your approach with couples and kind of like how you go about conceptualizing like couples issues and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you see like? Because again, I'm sure a lot of this could be different areas in the country where people live too, but like what do you see walking into your office as some of the bigger issues that couples in the area are struggling with when they come to see you?
Typically, I see couples who are in crisis.
Okay.
And these couples, like, they're coming to counseling because this is their last-ditch effort to save the marriage. Right. And so, which sometimes I'm like, start early, like start a maintenance plan of counseling. So hopefully you don't end up in that crisis where you're like, this is the last straw we have because that creates a lot of pressure on me. I'm like, okay, let's slow down. Like, we got to do some work on your end. But that's what I see. I see infidelity. I see addictions in marriages, domestic violence at times, just communication. Most couples, that's going to be their number one thing, where they're like, we're struggling with communication. But when we peel back the layers, it's what does that communication look like, right? Is it getting verbal abuse? Is it attacking each other, out of anger? Is it due to the infidelity? Is it due to one of you struggling with mental illness and not knowing how to support the other one? Struggling with addiction? There's a lot of different layers to communication.
Yeah, and just the thread too, like when you start to pull that layer back, I was hearing it as you were kind of giving the example for those who listen on. It's like that conceptual piece of understanding, like where is the false control, where are people trying to force things, where are the expectations, that need to be kind of just like coaxed out, because we can't rip them out.
Right.
God knows I tried when I was a young clinician. That doesn't work.
It does. It'll backfire.
Yeah. So, when you start to peel those layers back, are there any areas of like navigation, let's say like with deeper forms of communication that you're really passionate about sorting out? Like maybe a better way to ask that is like areas of growth that you see that lead towards a deeper conversation, not just we're having a hard time communicating.
Yeah. For me, I always say the most conflicts start in marriage due to expectations. And it's because we're expecting something that our spouse is not aware of or isn't capable of providing. And typically those expectations come from childhood, right? They come from the households that you grew up in. And so I really like to start there with couples of what did marriage look like for you, right? Like I came from a single mom household. So marriage to me was witnessing my grandparents' marriage during the summers when I'd be with them, but that wasn't my everyday, right? My everyday was a single mom who struggled and had strife with my dad and just things like that. So that also brought some expectations into my marriage, right? Of like, women, pro women, right? Like let's go women, like being independent. And so those expectations cause a lot of issues. So that's where I like to start is let's talk about who influenced you when it comes to marriage and how that could be impacting your marriage today.
Yeah. My therapist, when I first started working with her years ago, helped me kind of break down those models, the family of origin models of like what I had witnessed, which is exactly what you're talking about. And a lot of it was like getting me into community places and positions to observe healthy relationships. And that was, as far as like relationships go, both in my friendships and just community wise and then romantic relationships, it was a godsend. I didn't know that I needed to go and observe healthy relationships. I thought all the unhealthy crap was normal in my home growing up, and that's a big piece of with the expectations is like, well, breaking down the expectation of like, well, this is the norm that I expect. And all of it leads to resentments.
Exactly. It does. And I mean, the thing that you said, which I love that, is that challenge is you don't know that it's not healthy or not or abnormal until you witness something that is healthy, right? And which you sought out. And a lot of us don't.
Yeah, it's the in my practice, we call it the insider trading info. It's like the things that we knew we just didn't know we knew. Because I used to see healthy interactions and relationships prior to like therapy and recovery and these kind of things in my life. And I would look at it and be like, corny.
Right.
Exactly. Now it's like, these are the things that I want in my life. Like these are the things that I actively cultivate and work on. But, if you would have told the young me that was out running and gunning and making bad decisions, I thought these are corny, and I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
I knew I was off in some way, like the way I was looking at it, but I didn't know how much.
Yeah.
And so I think, just hearing as well, it's like we, as clinicians, we have that lived experience too on top of our training that helps us, I think, move those pieces around for clients to see.
Right. Yeah, which is that's good. I mean, I like I like how you said that because I coming from just a single mom household, in which love my mom. Shout out to my mom, one of my role models. But not having her, having the image of marriage, that instilled some beliefs in me of like, okay, why do you get married? Like, what's it mean to be submissive? Like, why shouldn't I have, all these different questions or things that I struggled with that were normal for my upbringing, but wasn't normal for my marriage, wasn't normal for my adulthood.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I like this little tangent we're on too because it's helping me as well with the just kind of the friendships that I have that are women and the romantic interest in my life, like to realize like letting a woman step into her feminine energy to like to be in like the true, I think, like healthy submissive
Yeah.
place of,
Yeah.
but that's still very, to use your quote from earlier, it's still very woman power because I can't do that the way that she can show me how that looks.
Yeah.
Because as a man, I'll need to be submissive at times because there are things in the relationship I can't do. And that was part in my younger years, and even as a clinician, like I needed to learn the functional, the practical way those things work.
Yeah.
You know, because the way I was doing it before didn't work. You know, and all the things you hear on the internet don't work either.
Right.
Yeah, that is a Wild West. There are some,
Yes.
you know, these last couple years with stuff on the internet, I'm like,
Yeah.
who gave these people a platform? This is wild out
Agreed.
here.
That's what, I challenge my sons, and I'll be like, oh, did you hear that from TikTok? Like, everything that you hear on TikTok is not true. Like, on social media, period. Do your own research.
Yeah, we're going to have to clip this together at some point and put a bunch of your clips on TikTok and they can watch those.
Right. Yes. Make money for me.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So back to kind of this communication with couples and recognizing expectations is a huge barrier to growth. What are some of the suggestions you might give to whether it's an individual listening and they're listening like, yeah, my husband does this or my wife does this, to help them let go of those expectations and kind of like gently do that? Like, how would you kind of guide them in a conversation on that?
Yeah, I would say control what's in your control. Because oftentimes that's where at the root of anxiety is control. Right? Because we are trying to control something that's not in our control, or what we really need to control, we don't know how to control.
Right.
So that is huge when it comes to marriage. We get upset because it's not in my control, right? I can't control my spouse coming home when they say they're going to come home. Or if my spouse says they're going to do the dishes and they don't. That's not in my control.
Yeah.
But what's in my control is to have a conversation about it, right? I feel XYZ when you say you're going to be home at a certain time and you're not.
Yeah.
Right? How can I support you in getting home on time? Right? Having those vulnerable conversations, which, when you are struggling in your marriage, it's hard to want to have those conversations.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is that you gotta be selfless and have those conversations if you want to see healthy change.
You gave the perfect framework. So for you guys listening, what Shanacy just broke down is what we would call, maybe traditionally, there's a lot of terms for it, but the talking boundary, right? You shared how you were feeling, right? Which no one can deny. That's my reality.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a fact, that's my reality. Right. And then she gave the example, and this is one where it's like, I think in a lot of scenarios, you could do this at work, you could do this in relationships, friendships. It's like, as long as you come with the examples, those also don't have to be the perfect reality. It's like our perception.
Right.
All right. And you made a vulnerable request. And I tell individuals all the time, if you stick to that format as best you can, you avoid the you statements.
Right.
You keep people out of the corner, and they're less likely to attack you.
Yeah. And like you said, just imagine if you use that at work or with your children or so, because you makes us defensive.
Yeah.
And that's our tendency, is like, you didn't come home when you say you were supposed to be, and right away that's like, oh, well,
Yeah.
I had such and such, and I and I, like that. It goes into the defensive mode, which then leads to somewhere we don't want to go.
Right.
Versus no one can dispute that.
Yeah.
You can't get defensive if I feel angry when you're not home by a certain time, right? That's my feelings.
Right. I love how, like, naturally, too, when you were explaining it, you led right into the vulnerable request, which I think that's where a lot of people get scared. Like, maybe unconsciously, too, but even in the conscious process, I think a lot of people are afraid to ask for their needs to get met. Do you see that a lot in practice, too?
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree because I typically challenge couples on, you're not married to your enemy. And when we are struggling, when we're in conflict in marriage, that's what our perception goes to, of like, you're against me. And if I feel like you're against me, I don't want to be vulnerable. with
Yeah.
you, with someone who's against me. But your spouse isn't your enemy. So it's how can we work on vulnerability so to build that trust, to build that safe place in our marriage where we both could be heard.
Yeah, and what a vulnerable journey that is to, like, once you've been hurt, because it's like, what cracks me up is if we look at it juxtaposed outside of therapy. Let's say it's like a business venture and someone's trying to sell you something. If a salesperson hurts you, that trust is broken forever.
Right.
It's over. It's done, right? Or like, I was listening to a guy who does espionage, or he used to, right? So he's talking on a podcast. He's like, once you break the trust and hurt somebody, it's over.
Yeah.
And but in therapy, when we're helping individuals navigate relationships, that vulnerability is the salvation. And in that safe space that's being held by the therapist, I think this is why it's such a unique landscape.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things that people look and they say, like, no, they've been against me for so long, can be averted, right? We can sidestep it and actually see the perspective you were sharing of, like, this is not your enemy.
Yeah.
It's more of that, like, that feeling in your gut that's not the fact.
Right.
It's not even so much that that's the enemy as much as just like that's feeling that itty bitty committee in here
Right.
that's telling you they're the enemy.
Yes, yeah. I like that. I always say, your mind is a scary place. Don't go there alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is. It'll play all types of tricks on you and lead you in a very toxic path if you allow it.
Yeah. Which I think is a good segue for, like, practicality. What are some of, like, the go-to coping strategies that you recommend for your clients? Like for me, I do a lot of, like, journaling exercises, and if that's something that you like, I'd love to hear maybe a few that you really like, or, just whatever you'd feel like sharing, just practical stuff you recommend for people.
Yeah, I like journaling. I recommend that too because it's evolved. Like, you don't have to have a fancy notebook and pen to journal. You can now do it in your phone, right? There's apps now for journaling. There's apps where it'll help you identify your mood, journaling starters, all sorts of things.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
Is there a specific app that you like that you would recommend?
I figured you'd ask that, and
It's
there
okay if
is
not.
one,
Okay.
but I don't know in my heart.
No
It's in my
worries, no worries.
phone.
I knew as I was asking, I was like, I'm putting her on the spot.
There is one that I really like, but I can't think of it. But I'll give it if you want to add it to the notes.
Yeah, we can
at
put it in
end.
the comments
Yeah,
section.
in the comments. But yeah, journaling, also affirmations. It's what are we feeding ourselves? Because oftentimes, right now with our political climate, that's all over the news. And the news can be depressing.
Yeah.
And so what are we feeding ourselves? So I say, like, write down an affirmation that you really want to replace and believe about yourself and put it in places that you'll see it often. So on your mirror with a dry erase marker, a sticky note on your visor for your car. So different places that you're going to see that often, so you can start feeding yourself more healthier, positive things. And workout. That's our natural endorphin, right? Not that you have to go run a marathon, but go for a walk around the block, a couple times a day, and drink lots of water. Because when we're dehydrated, that too can mess our whole system up.
Well, this is spoken as a true trauma treatment professional. It's like when the basic needs aren't met, it's like you take your trauma and turn it all the way up. The volume just gets louder and louder.
Yeah.
Are you hydrated? Did you get a base amount of calories in your system today that aren't just empty? And without having to go into all the details of, like, what those things look like, it's just, are you taking care of yourself?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basic self-care.
Yeah.
That typically goes out the window when we're not doing good emotionally or mentally.
Yeah. Yeah. In your private practice, I know you mentioned with couples, you kind of deal with them when they're in crisis mode. Do you find that your individuals are, like, a little bit more in, like, a place of foundation when they come to you for, like, private practice, like more willing and able to process? or like, like versus, how like treatment centers, they come in there in crisis,
Excuse me.
Bless you.
I got this tickle. Okay, can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah. Do you find that individual clients are coming to you in crisis as well, or you find that people that reach out for your individual therapy are kind of grounded and just looking to process?
Yeah, I see both.
Okay.
And I mean, most of my individuals, they're coming because of, we've seen an uptake in depression and anxiety since the pandemic. And so a lot of them are coming in to get some tools from that, but some of them are just looking for maintenance, and some are in crisis.
Yeah. And if you need a second, they'll
Yeah.
wait. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll take a
Thank
second
you.
here. We have everything updated in the comment section too so far. Cool. You're the man. Yeah, appreciate you. We got Chase behind the mic over there tonight. He's working hard for us. Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Sorry about that.
No
Hopefully.
worries. No worries. If you need a moment at any point, you just let me know.
Okay,
Yeah.
it will do.
All right. So we've talked about couples. We've talked about your EMDR treatment. Did you have like a supervisor that was really trauma informed that you really kind of like admired, and that was a big factor that kind of pulled you in that direction too? Or was this just kind of like, I'm working with this population and I want to give back?
Yeah, I think it was more of I'm working with this population and want to give back. And now I had a great supervisor, but she wasn't trauma informed.
Gotcha.
And I think, the practice I was at, like I told you, that we worked a lot with clients from a traumatic background, abuse, all those unfortunate things. That, too, I think just gave me more of a fire of everybody deserves counseling, wherever
Yeah.
they are, right? And even if they can't afford it, how can I be of service to those who may never be able to afford my services but still deserve it?
Yeah.
And so that was something that fueled me as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you get deeper into, just the difficult work you do and see with clients day to day, I think a lot of people benefit from hearing this from clinicians, which is what do you do on average to take care of you after you've had a hard day?
Oh, great question. I love Friends, the show Friends.
Friends?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's a great show.
I grew up watching Friends. The theme song came out when I was in high school.
Nice.
It was on the radio, a whole thing. But, they still play it today.
Yeah.
So that's my go-to. Like after sessions, especially if I have a hard session or a hard day, I'll just turn on Friends because it makes me laugh. I've probably seen them hundreds of times.
Yeah.
But I love Friends, love The Office, like all those mindless shows. And bath. I just love a bath. Like a good detox with a bath bomb is
there you go.
my favorite go-to. And pedicures. I have a whole self-care.
Do you have Corey
thing.
enlisted to get that all set up for you?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Date nights too.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Date nights too. Time with my husband. I love that. Anytime without the kids, I love.
Yeah, you were mentioning you have a 20-year-old son. How many kids do you guys have?
We have two, a 20-year-old and 13-year-old.
Okay.
And we're new grandparents.
No way.
So, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
3
exciting.
different worlds.
Yeah.
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 Plus, I'm a therapist.
Yeah. Well, talk about modeling for the generations, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Now they'll get to see what a healthy relationship looks like through the generations. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's always my hope and prayer.
Yeah, we're breaking the cycle over here.
Yeah, right.
Whatever that means for each of us. Huh?
Exactly. Yeah, I like that because I did grow up in a family on my dad's side where there was a cycle of divorce. And that was something that I said to Corey when we first got married of, I want to break that cycle. Like, we had to be the ones to break that cycle. So I like how you added that in.
Yeah. It's, we're all on our journeys, and this has been doing this show and just even just therapy, it's so beautiful to be able to meet people and to hear their stories and see how they're facing difficult things in our life and changing narratives. You know, especially because that's what you and I do day to day, and so we come across, I think, enough people who just aren't at that stage, you know, so we come across a lot of that too. So when you do see like things have worked out, things are working out in a direction that's just inspired, you know, and it's nice to see, and it's just, you know, your husband came in with you tonight, and it was nice to see you guys walk in and you were ready to be a part of the process. It's just cool. It's nice.
Absolutely. He's my biggest supporter. So
that's awesome. What's next for Shanacy in your practice, in the world of therapy? What can we expect to see as your career skyrockets?
Well, I mentioned the group practice. I recently transitioned within the last year to a group practice, and I just want to expand even more and add more clinicians to my practice. And I love being able to teach classes, teach different therapists, teach the community, just educate them on things having to do with counseling. So I have a few speaking and teaching engagements coming up to wrap up 2024, which I'm really looking forward to. And eventually IFS. Internal Family Systems.
All right, you're brave.
I know. But I just feel like that goes hand in hand with EMDR.
I think
and so I want to really get trained in IFS and see where that takes me next.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff. And as you do those engagements, if you wouldn't mind sharing those with me, and then I can share that with those who've gotten to know you here, and we can just continue to share all that information for you.
Yes, I would love that.
Yeah, very cool. I have a few. These are my like off the wall questions. Are you ready for these ones?
Okay.
If you could start a mental health amusement park, what would be the first ride that you built and why?
Oh, wow. First ride would probably be like teacups.
Teacups.
Like at Disney World, they have the teacups because it's so like gentle and it's a peaceful ride. And that's what I feel like for mental health, we got to be gentle with ourselves.
I like that. Yours would be, eventually someday I'm going to have to take all the answers and commission an artist to draw this amusement park. But yours would be like right at the beginning when people walk in, like, all right, let's start you on the teacups.
Exactly.
It's right behind the castle.
Yes, that's it. That's my spot.
Very cool. Who is your favorite childhood cartoon?
Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo.
Yes.
How would Scooby-Doo benefit from coming to see you for therapy?
You know, I mean, I say Scooby-Doo did it afraid. Right? he would just go in, even though he was scared and questioned, but he would do it. And so he could benefit from some grounding techniques.
Yeah, there you go.
Because he'll get all worked up, like, okay, let's talk about what's at the root of that and teach you some different grounding techniques to overcome that fear.
Yeah, I like that. Cool. Any final words you would share with the audience, and just any last things you'd share with them?
Yeah, do it afraid. I think that's a great way to end that. I'm big on stepping out on faith. Do it afraid, go to counseling. Do it afraid, do that coping technique that you've been avoiding. Do it afraid and look for a therapist in your area. Or if your current therapist isn't working for you, do it afraid and look for another one. But that's what the motto I try to live by, and that's what I challenge all of you with.
I like that. Yeah, that's a great saying too, to tag on everything for you when we put this out.
Oh, good.
Yeah, do it afraid.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Shanaci Cook, LPC. You can find her private practice at
sccounselingcenter.com.
Perfect. And you will find that in the comments in the description below. Find us on YouTube, Spotify. We're here live every Friday night, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We break the cycle together. We love you.